I'm pretty sure you've seen so many Gley videos out there, especially ones with Tamer and Rocket Spam, and it's more centered around only bossing. Yes, Gley is the best bossing unit in the game, just because the way she enables guns and gives them the biggest thing that they need, infinite ammo and more damage. However, what if I were to use my Gley to enable my gun to also enable my Gley to enable her ability? What's good, folks? It's Nightmare Frame here with a new First Descendant video coming at you with an all-rounder Gley. These build videos do take a while to release because a lot of investment is put into them just to show you guys how powerful a unit can be when given the time and effort. And of course, sometimes your credit card. And none of this is possible without the help of you guys, especially the ones on Twitch who help with the grind for these 14-hour streams. Now, this build is a Gley loadout that is very flexible in what it can do and can be taken pretty much anywhere. It has great single target damage and somewhat decent AoE. And no, it will never compete with a Bunny or Freyna nuking the area, although your guns will feel hella satisfying. To understand the build, first we have to know how Gley works. Let's start off with her passive. Gley is a unique unit where she doesn't possess any shields or mana, but uses health and a unique resource to use her abilities. Thirst. This passive has you collect life essence from enemies you've slain, and they drop at a 30% chance, and the drop rate cannot be modified. They look like little balls of red gloop. These balls have a field timer and don't last forever, but the field time can be extended with duration mods. Regardless, you have to go and pick these up, and it will heal you and fill up your second resource bar. This resource bar fills up with 10 individual bars, and only with this resource bar you can use the second and fourth ability. Although your first, third, and fourth ability use health as resource, the fourth ability consumes both health and the life force bar, and when I say consume, it takes it all. Gley has 7 to 8-ish abilities because switching between Frenzied and Normal alters the functionality of her abilities. So let's start with her first ability, Frenzied. She starts off in normal mode, and with this mode she has 4% damage reduction, really low, but it can scale with her second ability. And in Frenzied state, she gives her guns a 15% boost in their base damage and grants bullets penetration, basically armor-piercing rounds. The damage modifiers are not affected by any form of power or skill power modifier. And because her being in this powerful state, she is more vulnerable to damage, and her healing received is greatly decreased. Your health is also used as a resource to activate this ability. Now onto the second, Life Siphon. This is simple. She needs her second resource to use this ability. It's an AoE damaging ability that is used to sustain and enhance her defenses. While in normal mode, enemies hit by this ability grant Gley damage reduction that stacks up proportionally to the enemy's hit, and that's 2% per enemy that caps out at 10 stacks. And how long this buff lasts is affected by duration. While in Frenzied mode, this ability is used to sustain Gley, where it consumes the enemy's health to heal her up, and this damage is affected by modifiers. Increased Sensory, the star of the show. In normal mode, while the ability is active, it increases the amount of health she gains from all healing sources, even from the life orbs she picks up. She also gains an overall 30% movement speed multiplier. In the frenzied state, she is able to grant all her weapons infinite magazine, further boosting your DPS. This ability does have a very short duration and a very long cooldown. That's why the bread and butter for all Gley builds are going to have a large duration and reducing their cooldown as much as possible to give this ability a massive uptime. And finally, her fourth, Massacre. This is Gley's unique weapon. Gley summons her own pistol, where it gains a magazine based on the amount of life force you had when you activated it. So, max 10 bars gives you 10 bullets in the magazine. This magazine is of course sustained with the help of your third ability. Massacre scales from several buffs: your frenzied state, dimension, non-attribute modifiers, HP consumed, and lastly, your equipped weapon. Yes, your weapon will function as a stat stick to boost the damage of your Massacre. If your weapon functions as an SMG or a sniper, your Massacre will inherit those stats from crits, fire rate, modded elements, and even bonus elemental damage from affixes on your weapon. Using Massacre in the frenzied state will add a flat amount of additional damage to what Massacre fires. The best thing to do with this ability is pair it with a strong, fast-firing weapon. And of course, in normal mode, it stuns enemies. Yeah, don't use it in the normal mode. Absolutely useless. But here's a nice tip for all Gley players. Your third ability can be used in any mode and can carry over to the next. So for example, you can activate the speed boost and healing from your non-frenzied state, turn on frenzy, and when the cooldown is over, you can now have both the speed bonus, healing bonus alongside the infinite ammo. That's if you have enough cooldown reduction. So now that you understand how her kit works, I'm going to make maintaining my life force 10 times easier. And that's with the Blood and Iron skill module that augments her passive. So now rather than depending on killing enemies and running to pick up these life force orbs, your crits can grant you life force. It still has a 30% chance to grant you these life force, but if you have a fast firing weapon, that 30% is going to feel so easy. And now for every module farm, literally most of your items, use your codex and track the mod you want to farm. Now that you know how she works, let's take a look at how I've built her. Alright, let's take a look at a quick gameplay loop before I show you how the build works. This is very important because sometimes people don't really pay attention to their cooldowns or do not know where to look at when they're managing their cooldowns and resources. Another thing about Gley, it doesn't matter what weapon you're using, you never have to worry about magazine capacity, nor do you have to worry about reload speed. So you can go with all those negatives that affect magazine and reload speed. For example, I'm going to deplete all my ammo right here, activate my third ability, and I can still shoot. So she never has to worry about ammo at all. So pay attention right here. You see these green markers? This displays your current active boon. Right now you see that little icon with her hair up, pretty much means that she's in frenzy. When she deactivates it, her hair is down. Now you see that icon with the weird missiles. That's your infinite ammo buff. And when you're in non-frenzied state, you have that healing icon. This also grants you that movement speed multiplier, which helps you to get to objectives faster. So right now I'm using my abilities, lowering my HP as much as possible. But you'll notice when you're playing in open world content, health is never an issue. You will never go down that low. Okay, we activate Frenzy. Alright, all these enemies are coming in. Using the Thunder Cage, you'll just destroy everything in sight. Very simple loadout. Reactivate the ability. Also pay attention to how we're healing. I do have a mod on the build called HP Collector. HP Collector, funny enough, is not hindered or set back by the negative healing modifiers you have on Frenzy. So you can overheal just fine. Now, there is a 2-second interval, so you can count in your head or just, lay on the trigger. So now you've noticed I built up some life force. I have my fourth ability active. I can activate that ability, and I only had 4 life orbs. And it gives me 4 bullets in the magazine. But with my third ability, I have infinite ammo, and it inherits the fire rate of my weapon. But another cool thing is, it's not affected by the weird spread that your other weapons have. It's ridiculously accurate. You can easily snipe enemies from across the room, even though the weapon that you're using can't do so. Here's a quick thing about Massacre. When you're activating their ability, make sure you have your stat stick as the active weapon. So right now, the Thunder Cage is my stat stick, so I want it to be active before I activate Massacre, so it can inherit those stats. So right now, Massacre is activated. I get that crazy fire rate that the Thunder Cage has. Now, you can't weapon swap at all while you're in the Massacre state. So if you accidentally use a different weapon, well, you have to deactivate Massacre to use it on your actual stat stick. Okay, now that we're back, let's take a look at the build. Starting off with the Reactor. As always, over here I do have a non-attribute and dimension skill power boost ratio reactor with the Thunder Cage mounting condition. So that grants me that bonus 160%. Now, for those wondering, like, you don't need this if you're just using a gun build. No, you can use a purple one just fine. But the main important thing is the affix, the substats at the bottom. Skill cooldown. Now, I was unlucky, but the best thing you want is duration and cooldown together. And if you get both in gold, well, that's even better. I did get that both in gold, but it was for something completely different, as my Thunder Cage is going to be my main DPS weapon and my stat stick at the same time. Let's take a look at the rolls. Unfortunately, I was unlucky with some of these rolls. Usually what you want is crit rate, crit damage, weak point damage, and bonus damage to Colossi. If you can get that combo, it's giga. Now, for the components, you definitely want to have the Annihilation set, which comes from the Devourer. When you kill hard mode Devourer, you drop this. Now for the two-piece, you get a 5.7% duration. That's always good. Gley needs duration to upkeep her abilities. But have a look at the four-piece. This is where things get interesting. Your firearm attack increases proportionally to the ratio of max HP to HP loss. So if you're 50% HP or lower, you gain more damage. So this is why when you look at my background footage when I'm fighting bosses, I'm usually under 50% HP, just for that extra boost in damage. It's always great to have. And the last bit, you get some HP recovery, which is some decent survivability as a whole. Now for the Gley build. For your sub attack, you can use whatever you want. I just have Shock Punch leveled, and I've always kept it there. I don't really care about the other ones as of yet. For my skill module, I do have Blood and Iron, which augments her passive. Otherwise, all her abilities stay the same. This is just a passive augment. For the build itself, I do have a bunch of duration and cooldown reduction. Starting off with skill extension. This gives me a 36% duration. Looking at battle stamina, this gives me HP and some duration. Always nice to have a decent amount of HP because you're going to be using that as a resource. And even more HP. So we're quite healthy. Our only defensive mod with this increased defense. Very, very important. Now we're going to take a look at these two interesting mods. Now, I'm pretty sure you might not have seen these mods before unless you're looking at a Gley video, because the negative of MP conversion does not affect Gley because she doesn't have mana. But it grants you that massive minus 36% cooldown reduction. So good to have. And of course, you lose some mana. Who cares? You don't use mana. And an outstanding investment. This grants you duration plus HP heal. Nimble Fingers and MP conversion reduce your cooldown. But there are two mods that increase your damage and reduce your cooldown. Starting off with Focus on Dimension. This gives me that Dimension skill power modifier and reduces my cooldown. And lastly, Focus on Non-Attribute gives me non-attribute skill power and reduces my cooldown. If you're not worried too much about Massacre builds, you can leave these unranked just for that cooldown reduction, because the secondary stat does not scale with the mod rank. Now, for those who don't know, anything that is labeled skill power will function as a skill boost ratio. So non-attribute becomes a skill boost ratio, which is additive to that non-attribute part of the skill boost ratio. That's also very important to note. And this is another reason why we do a lot of damage with Massacre. And lastly, over here, HP Collector. Looking at Frenzy, you'll see incoming recovery decreased by 50%. That 50% does not affect HP Collector. You're always going to get a set amount using HP Collector, regardless of that negative. But this is the Gley build that works everywhere. This is especially important if you love using guns rather than abilities, because with Gley, your abilities are there to enable your guns. So quickly taking a look at my Thunder Cage build. Here's one thing that I want people to know. Your DPS, this stat lies to you quite a lot. But first, let's take a look at the build so you understand why. Now granted, I need 2 more mods to finish up the build. Starting off with our base damage coming from Rifling Reinforcement, Action Reaction, and Mental Focus. Mental Focus stacks up to 150 stacks when you keep firing. You can maintain this very easily. So have a look at the green boons next to Gley. Activate my third ability. You see how that little green icon is counting up? It's still going. Reactivate my third ability, and I'm keeping up the damage. Just like that. Now, this is best case scenario. Usually you'll see around 70 to 100, which is a nice boost in your damage. Quickly going back to the Gley build. Now, I've seen some people using Walking a Tightrope. This grants you skill power and firearm attack when your HP is lower. To be honest, we have so much base damage, this isn't really needed because we have that set bonus, plus we've modded our weapon right. So you don't really need this. Back to the Thunder Cage build. Here we do have our crit damage, and it reduces our reload speed, but that 120% critical damage added on with this better concentration, 74%, and our weapon has that critical damage coming from the affix. All of this is additive to each other and grants us a massive boost to our critical damage. Now, here's the thing. Critical damage is nothing if you do not crit, because this multiplies your damage every time you crit. And pay attention, I don't have any crit mods at the moment. And there are 2 crit mods that increase your crit to the next level. You have Better Insight and Edging Shot. You can use both of these together. Now here's another reason why the DPS here lies to you. When you're fighting bosses, they have an elemental weakness. For example, if you're killing Dead Bride, she's weak to fire. So you usually want to have an elemental damage mod so you can increase your damage output. But now when I grab Better Insight, this is a 39% crit chance increase. That's a 7% increase to our base 20. Look how we get an increase to our DPS. You see how that doesn't make sense? It's just 7% more crits, but we get more DPS. Now when you think about it, yes, you are kind of increasing your DPS because you're increasing the probability of you critting. And when you crit, you will multiply your damage thanks to the critical damage mods. But because we're firing so fast and we have infinite ammo, this increase to the crits doesn't really matter. But it'll be nice to have both of these right at the end when the build is complete. Otherwise, with a loadout like this, you're going to shred, especially if you're using Massacre. So let me go to everyone's favorite boss test dummy, the Devourer. And the third ability in non-frenzied mode, gets us there faster. Ready up with our frenzy, buff up, and keep targeting his shoulder. And basically we've weakened his shoulder. And we have access to our beautiful Massacre. Hold on tight. Our HP is quite low right now. And we're going to break him. And let's end this. Shooting the weak point. Reactivate that. And he's dead. Easy as that. Oh, we got an augment. Nice. The super don't tell me that's a Kyle augment. Hopefully not. Slightly slower than rockets, but we're chilling. It's a goddamn Kyle augment. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the Gley loadout for bossing, for horde killing, for operations, all of those things. We cleared all the bosses, waiting on the new ones. I'm excited to test this out against tougher enemy units. Because right now, there's nothing that can challenge Gley's consistent damage output. Because everyone else has to sit there, reload their weapons all the time. All Gley has to do is press 3, boss is dead. Beautiful, very simple to do. Anyway, folks, that has been it from this First Descendant video featuring Gley. And if you've enjoyed and learned something from it, please feel free to leave a like, share, and
subscriber
for more First Descendant content streams and so much more. Do refer to the description. Thanks for watching. As always, a peace. Bye-bye now.